right, everyone, welcome to the second episode of I.C.U. Live. This is an episode surrounding the song Lonely Soul, which is a song largely about isolation. I'm back with my co-host Austin Berry here, and our guest today is Mr. Kevin Aichelmann. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes. Would you like to say something, maybe give your background, uh, everything about yourself that you want the people to know, and then we can just dive right into the conversation. I think today's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, so background heavy in engineering and technology. So whether it's like physics, programming, PCB design, just like the whole like robotics bit. And then in industry, bouncing around between material handling and now like critical infrastructure where you've got main different industries in critical infrastructure. So whether it's like water treatment, whether it's like data centers, like conductor, all that. So focus on like the controls aspect to it. So I've been seeing how technology has really just like taken off over the past, let's call it 5, 6 years ever since COVID. So very interesting industry to be in.
Yeah. What I guess we don't have to, I know you had a lot you wanted to cover, and I'm happy to cover all of it. I'm personally interested in the changes you've seen from COVID to now versus how things were pre-COVID, especially when it comes to things along the line of technology. But before you dive into that, I just want to say the general overview of why I think it's important to talk about this is because I believe technology is being orchestrated to make people more comfortable in isolation. I think it's very much largely the goal, especially with social apps and things of that nature, to increase people's time on those apps, to engage them and make them find ease and comfortability more on apps and in technology than you can find in your physical day-to-day life. And so that's kind of like the ground and the foundation I want to rest on and bring everything back to. So with that being kind of the basis, what ways do you think, even just in the last 5, 6 years, that that's begin to happen, and or do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, like that's completely right. So I would say ever since around COVID time, it's called 5, 6 years ago, that whole shift of social distancing, right? Where now you are putting yourself like kind of in your own bubble, in your own personal space, where whether it's at airports and it's like you always have say even 5 years later, always have a seat separating you from like a stranger or whether it's in grocery stores, you have your own like personal bubble where you don't really interact with strangers as much as you did, say, pre-COVID times. And with a social media aspect, um, I mean, like, say 10, 15 years ago, you had Divine, you had like the Facebook, and where that kind of transitioned to more lately is now like with TikTok and Instagram, you have all the like influencer arc where everyone's trying to get famous online, everyone's trying to build up kind of like their own following. We've got thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, or it just kind of becomes a number game where you're watching someone else's life through a screen rather than actually like going out and interacting with them. Um, and I don't know, it just kind of like I would just say it's like ever since COVID, it's really become more noticeable, whether or not that's whether or not we like saw glimpses of that pre-COVID or whether it's something like after COVID. Um, it's definitely been something that, given like the past even like 3 years, um, we're seeing a trend where now it's all primarily online, and you can't really it's hard to interact in society nowadays without your phone, where you
Mhm.
just like you're always connected, you're always doing something. Where um, going like say even like a day without your phone almost just seems like unheard of anymore.
Yeah. Do you think that we were already heading in that direction? Or do you think maybe COVID like just sped that up because of the whole isolation during that time?
I mean, a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was inevitable that it was going to happen in terms of us always heading that direction. You,
Yeah.
you have technology that's been advancing since we were little, where we grew up with flip phones, with the slide phones, where it was it wasn't a given that you even had internet on your phone growing up. And now we have, facial recognition, we have touch screens, we have essentially the whole world at our fingertips. So that's always been inevitable where you have all these major companies that are like continuing to strive and be better, outperform other companies. So like the increase of innovation, there was really no stopping that. But I guess like with COVID, that was just like whether it's a perfect storm or whatever the case, it just seems that that served to I wish just like be a catalyst to now where we have um, essentially like entire countries, entire continents shutting down and saying, oh, you have to distance yourself from people. You have to be in lockdown for a year. And like since then, it's always like before, after COVID sort of thing where
Yeah.
there is no going back. I mean, there's no going back to both before COVID times. There's no going back to a world pre-AI. Like it's here and it's not going anywhere.
Mhm. It's kind of reminiscent of 9/11, excuse me, 9/11 and how flight, what is that, like TSA really stepped in. Obviously, I wasn't very conscious during 9/11. I was only like 3 or 4 years old. But before that, I've heard whether it was my parents, grandparents, flying regulations were so much easier. There wasn't nearly as much security. You could walk with your family all the way up to the gate. Things like this that are really unheard of to someone like me today, where I didn't fly for the first time until I was like 14 or 15 years old. Maybe it was a little bit younger than that, but regardless, there's TSA out the wazoo, security clearance out the wazoo, and it does feel like it was a bit of a slow burn into what COVID became, where it was government regulated isolation in that sense. I'm curious, on the crossroads of technology, isolation, a lot. I mean, you even brought up influencers and stuff like this. Influencer ads and things like that are things that are way more popular even today. And you see a lot of influencers advocating for stuff, really anything that will give them a check. And that kind of brings me to like thinking of people like Elon Musk and things like this, or people like this, Peter Thiel, these people who are big into the, uh, I guess, infrastructure. I don't know if that's the proper word of getting technology from theory into a physical thing you can obtain. And I know we wanted to talk about Neuralink and something like this, and I don't know if I'm jumping to the next subject too quickly, but I do think that there's a connection point here of people's dependence on technology. Like you said, it's kind of unheard of for someone to go a whole day without their phone. What's your estimate, and maybe not even just necessarily time frame, but what do you think the world's going to start looking like where people are more dependent on things like brain chips and things of that nature?
I mean, that's tough, right? Because like when we're talking about Neuralink, the almost the foundation of that company, how it started was assistive technology. So you have paraplegics and quadriplegics that have very little function of whether it's their arms, their legs, both. So the goal there was to have a brain machine interface that allowed for an increase of quality of life. So if, say, you're wheelchair bound and you can't control anything, but whether it's like you have assistive technology for your tongue where you have like a retainer that can do like up, down, left, right, center, the tongue, and can control wheelchairs, can control exoskeletons, or things like Neuralink where you can do all that with your thoughts. So that's how it all started. Um, I've been following it for every bit of, well, let's call it 7, 8 years, where now they're in human trials now, right? So how it started was animal trials with pigs, where you put a pig on a treadmill, and um, how the brain machine interface works is it was hooked up to your motor cortex, and they would be able to predict how the pig's joints would move before it actually moved on the treadmill. And once they were able to do that, the next step was with primates. So you had, say, like a monkey playing Pong on a computer where you had a joystick, and you would be able to like move the joystick and see on the computer that they were actually playing the game. Then they would unplug the joystick from the computer, and the monkey would still be able to control the computer game with its intent, where that device in the brain where it was able to see how like say your arm would be moving up, down, left, right, and they would be able to correlate that to like machine signals. So the whole point there was now with human trials, now it's in assistive technology, so people that are wheelchair bound can still say control their phone, control their computer with their thoughts. That's how it started. So now it's like, okay, what next? What is the next 5 years can look like, or 10 years? And it's speculation, so it's not um it hasn't been confirmed, but like from a logic standpoint, it checks out in terms of, say you have a severed spinal cord. um all that is just a bridge that has been severed. The connection's been severed. The electrical signals cannot transfer, or I guess like transmit from your brain to the base of your spine and then throughout your whole body with your nervous system. And what brain machine interfaces, or like say Neuralink, is trying to do is not necessarily cure that severed connection, but to bypass it. So now instead of um, trying to like fix the severed connection, all you're doing is you have a brain machine interface in your brain, and then another one um, like after the severed connection, and the goal was that they could communicate with each other and still, or like reestablish a electrical connection, completely bypassing the severed connection. So that is from an assistive technology standpoint, where say now we're talking about quote unquote curing paralysis, where you have the ability for your brain to now talk to your arms and your legs again, even if you have a severed spinal cord. Um, Other like potential options for that technology is restoring sight. And it's not in the sense of like, okay, we're going to use your same eyes that maybe have like uh, degeneration or blind since birth. It's not like now you're going to be able to see with your eyes. It's more a matter of like a digital alternative, where now instead of like biological eyes, now you have cameras, and those cameras can talk to the BMI and have that um, have a semblance of what we perceive as sight, where now instead of reading neural impulses from the brain, it's now writing neural impulses to the brain. So it would be that technology telling the brain, this is what I'm perceiving. And from a practical standpoint of say like robotics, that's already happening. It's machine learning and machine vision. So with say AI, you have robots that or like you have um, yeah, I guess like robots with cameras on them, and the from the software standpoint, AI is able to interpret the cameras get being picked up, and that is like a quote unquote vision aspect of robotics. All you're doing now is you're bridging the machine aspect with the actual like biology aspect to it.
I can understand the vision one, where if it's cameras and they are telling the brain to see what the cameras are seeing. How, for like the one where they've lost movement over their ligaments, how is that being bypassed though? Like, I don't
So
understand that.
electrical signals. So with your brain, when
But
you
is it
really
like
boil it
kind of
down,
okay, go ahead.
so like neurons in your brain,
Uh-huh.
electrical synapses where it's you have whether it's billions, whether it's trillions of
Yeah.
neurons, that we don't fully understand every single connection in terms of say when you think of a cat, what exactly happens in your brain to where you're able to picture that image. Um, but whether it's neurons in your brain or whether it's your spinal cord, all that is electrical signals traveling through your body.
Hmm.
So when you have a severed spinal cord, the like high level, right? So the electrical signals are not able to travel from your brain all throughout your spinal cord. So with say the alternative in like bypassing that severed connection is not curing the connection, but essentially just like creating another bridge. So a bridge burned down, a bridge collapsed, and instead of trying to repair said bridge, you build a new one. And that is what they're trying to do. You're completely scrapping the original bridge that collapsed, and you're having a connection between your brain to the other side, which is the um, downstream of the severed connection. And that way you have two devices talking to each other where you have reestablished a connection from an electronic standpoint and like more like technology standpoint, not a biological standpoint.
So it sounds like with the way you described it with the bridge, that they're using because they can't fix whatever's going on, that they're basically similar to the site where they're broadcasting or telling your brain what you're able to see. They're basically telling you what you're able to do now. That's what these things are doing. That's the bridge there. It's like the technology is saying, because you can't use your legs, well, then you install a different technology that allows that connection to the brain to happen. And so then the technology is telling them that they can use their legs, basically.
Kind of. It's this is all like speculative and very early in
Yeah.
design, right? So this isn't something that's going to happen in the next 5 years. We're talking about next 10, 20 years,
Okay.
where there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. Reestablishing the connection is the first hoop. So with that, now you say, okay, I am able to have my brain tell my right leg I want to move. But now it's a matter of, okay, are you actually going to feel that? So it's very difficult of a problem to solve
Yeah.
because like whether it's feeling, whether it's muscles, where if we're talking about like quadriplegics, muscles atrophy, the tendons atrophy, that there's a lot going on where even if you were able to move your limbs, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the strength to move your limbs. So this is just step one in terms of like not repairing, but reestablishing a connection. Um, Further down the road is a matter of like, okay, can we bring back feeling? Can we bring back strength? Can we have the muscles and the circulation to the rest of the body be restored so that muscles can now be strengthened to the point of being able to walk after maybe not being able to walk for 10, 20 years. So yeah, that's step one.
Where in that process are they right now? Do you have any clue? Obviously, you
Kind
said they're
of.
in human trials.
Yeah, so human trials, from my understanding, have been pretty successful, very early on. So in terms of what they're able to do with reading and writing to the brain is limited. So when we're talking about how many neurons are in the brain from a technology standpoint, it's tip of the iceberg. So as of right now, I believe they're currently on 1,024 electrodes hooked up to the brain, and that is only in one particular part of the brain, the motor cortex. So you have different parts of the brain, different lobes of the brain, whether it's
Yeah.
frontal, parietal, occipital, all that. Um, so they're ambitious. They want to be able to 10x and 100x and 1,000x to the point where now you have millions of electrodes in the brain, where you can read and write not to just one area, but multiple areas, or maybe the entire brain. They're not there yet. That's something that is insanely complicated where it's a very invasive surgery where currently right now they have to drill a hole in your head and a robot, this is all robotics that is doing these surgeries, but you have a hole, whether it's the size of like a quarter, half dollar, whatever, but that part of your skull is removed and the the actual device is in place where your skull once was, or the part of your skull. But
Oh,
I mean, when you're talking about
Crazy.
yeah.
scaling that up to, I mean, like um, multiple factor, or like going from 10x to 100x, right? So that is a severe trauma to the brain, and whether or not someone is able to actually survive that much trauma, from like putting all that electrodes in your brain, we don't know. So that's why they're very early on in human trials. But that would be the next step, is seeing how much more that technology can be scaled up.
Wow.
Forgive my ignorance with technology, but I know that with a lot of tech comes a lot of risk for like cybersecurity. Is that an issue?
Yeah. Um, so So, I mean, think back early days of Tesla where there were cybersecurity risks where you had bad actors that were able to hack into
Yeah.
cars and say, next time the cameras picked up a fire truck, instead of braking, accelerate. So that's something where that's always going to be a risk, especially nowadays with AI. Cybersecurity, there's a massive shift to how do we prevent AI from, um, say, infiltrating, whether it's servers, whether it's any sort of like firewall penetration, to now where you don't want someone having access to documents, to like confidential files. So that is, it's a very tough challenge, where there's the cybersecurity aspect of having AI play the role of defense to counter AI that is attacking. So
That's
it's tough. It's something that like people always say that the weakest link is the human aspect, where say you have all these phishing attempts where you get a text message saying, oh, copy and paste this link in your browser, you have a traffic violation, or whether you get an email thinking it's from your boss, but in reality it's someone that is trying to access your information. There's the human aspect to it where um, some think that that's the weakest link, but like we don't know the implications of how AI is going to play a role in cybersecurity and how to even defend against that. So when you're talking about machines pretty much hooked up to your brain, it's like, yeah, how can you prevent whether it's individuals or whether it's companies accessing information that before now was never even an option of like being able to read your own thoughts. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of implications. It's going to take a significant amount of time to actually become mainstream to the point where this evolves from more than just assistive technology to now commercial aspect where, if you wanted to, you could just go into the clinic and get a Neuralink. Like it, we're so far away from that actually happening. But it's interesting to think about the implications of cybersecurity with that.
Yeah, it sounds to me like before even something like the Neuralink could work, it has to learn the lay of the land a bit. And what I mean by that is before it can tell the brain how to fix this or bridge these gaps, it has to learn the brain first. And what, like you said, they kind of observe the animal with the Neuralink in with the joystick, and then they turn the joystick off, and then it can anticipate what it's going to do because it's learned the synapses that are firing as it's working the joystick. So that makes me wonder, and maybe you know the answer to this, maybe not. Do you know if they would have to use the device to learn the brain? Or could this potentially be a thing where these social apps, these corporations partnering with these social apps, these phones, obviously you already have like screen time reports, you have ads that are catered to like conversation. I could be like, yo, bro, those shoes are dope and describe them. And then in 20 minutes, I get an ad for that exact shoe. The other day, I was joking with my wife. I was like, oh man, I wish I would have gotten to Lord of the Rings before I got married. I keep seeing all these Lord of the Rings wedding rings. I'm not that big of a nerd, but I will say, like 30 minutes later, she got an ad for one. And so that makes me wonder because I feel like all these corporations are so in bed with one another, is it possible that they are learning the brain in real time now using these apps and stuff so they'll have less work to do once things like this do become mainstream? Is that something that even makes sense as a question?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point to bring up in terms of like, are these companies able to build profiles of people where um if you actually read the terms of service on some of these things where you just blindly click say yes, I accept, like the there's a lot of scary implications where it could be the level of like all the permissions that you're giving these apps, where whether it's location or like precise location, where say apps that have no business needing to know where you are know exactly where you are at all times. You have um, different levels of accepting like permissions where you can say an app can only access your location when the app is open, or say like Pokemon Go, right, where you always want that app to have access to your location so that you get your steps in and then your Pokemon level up and all that. So whether it's location or whether it's camera, whether it's microphone, the implications there are if these companies have access to your camera, it's a matter of, okay, now what can they do with that information? So say you're scrolling on social media, they have access to your camera, and now they can track where your eyes are looking. So with that, how some social media apps create algorithms is, say you have 10 different reels on your screen, and how they're able to gauge overall like interest in like building your preferences is how long you stare at a certain reel. So whether out of the 10 reels, you got cat videos, you got robots, you got all that. And if your eyes are concentrated more on a particular video or a particular part of a video, like areas, that is how it's able to learn your preferences. Where now, you keep scrolling and scrolling. It's like, wow, I'm seeing a lot more videos that I want to spend time looking at. And now with that, it's like, okay, you're more engaged, you're spending more time on these apps. Um, so yeah, to your original point, I think it's very possible where um the the levels and the how technology is progressing, where from a software side and like from all these algorithms, where um it is possible that they are able to create a profile where they know from like a data aspect, they like all of the videos you liked, all of the videos that you had increased interaction with. And if someone wanted to, all this data that is associated with a single profile, now it's a matter of, okay, what other profiles, what other accounts, what other apps um, have similar data? And then it goes a step further is, okay, were all of these accounts, all these apps accessed from the same device, from the same location, from the same IP address? And with that, completely different companies have data that, um, I mean, whether data is being sold for um, however much money, um, data can be easily passed around from player to player to the point where now a profile that is like that is made from one account can be cross-referenced to other accounts, and now um, the amount of information that is able to be linked to a single person is unfathomable. Where from a digital aspect, you can have um, a significant amount of information that someone is able to know about you without ever meeting you in your life. So when you talk about, say, Neuralink and learning how the brain works, learning how synapses fire when you hear certain sounds, when you smell, when you taste, when you see certain things. From the digital and like technology aspect to it, yeah, I mean, there's another side of it where um, the the amount of time that you spend on like whatever can be tracked digitally. So if you put two and two together, it's like, yeah, we're living in a time where time is our biggest like commodity, and like we, in a sense, are a commodity where whether it's ad revenue, whether it's affiliate links, like the time spent online is, when you all boil it down, it's revenue. It's how can we get people's attention to click on these links to buy this product. Um, so whether it's algorithms that are tailoring videos or links or content or products to a specific individual, yeah, it's all a matter of how can we sell this. Um, to a very wide audience here.
Wow. Okay, well, I have a lot to say on that. Kevin, that was absolutely stressful to hear you say all of that.
Absolutely.
It has me kind of thinking, like there's like a nice side of that that helps with convenience and comfort, right? But I feel like the vast majority that could go a very sinister route very quickly. We talked briefly about cybersecurity. We talked briefly about Neuralink, these corporations colluding and stuff. One of the more random questions I want to ask before I get to a more pointed, like broad point of maybe even the spiritual aspect of this type of stuff would be, let's say a company, one company in particular, because if you go to the grocery store, there's like all these different brands, right? Of different cereals you could buy or different breads you could buy. But if you go and look at the parent companies, even within these smaller companies, like this, I think it's like five companies own everything that's in the grocery store. When it comes to companies that collect data on individuals, obviously at the point that we're at now within digital history, a lot of these companies are still separate, I would think, from what I know. And if that's not the case, I would like to know. But even in the fact that they are separate, as eventually will happen, bigger companies start absorbing these smaller companies, big apps start absorbing smaller apps. You look at like Facebook absorbing Instagram and things of that nature. Do these new companies get that data off acquisition? In would you say, do you know?
I mean, there's no way to know for certain, just because like that's level of there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, whether it's um, direct like customers, and then you have parent companies, and like that paper trail wasn't always easy to follow one way or another, whether that's intentional or whatever the case. But um, I would say like in terms of little mergers, in terms of parent companies, I mean that hasn't been a new thing, and I don't think that's going to be changing. Where you're always going to have parent companies that own a very large portion of the industry. Um, and then whether it's new players, yeah, I mean it's a matter of like, okay, the new players can't always compete or catch up or have the amount of like financial backing on their own. So that's when you get into like whether it's acquisition, whether it's whatever deals, where smaller companies have more of a financial backing, that can come at a cost where now it's not, whether it's like owned by like a family company or a private company, but now it's owned by like a corporation, in some aspect. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to say exactly how much, I guess, like privacy we have anymore, in terms of like anything on the internet. Is
It
like
doesn't
one way
sound
or
like we have
another.
any.
Yeah, one way or another, it's all on, whether it's like local servers, whether it's cloud servers, all that data is being captured somewhere. And yeah, there's like agreements, and there's but good, and in terms of conditions, in terms of service, where you're able to reach out directly to companies and request data deletion, but that information isn't always easy to find, for a reason where they want to keep said data. Um, and whether or not they keep it for a matter of like a year, 2 years after account deletion, um, it's a matter of like, okay, how do they even define deleting? Where is it total, like information like destruction where it's both digital and hard copies being deleted, or is it just say digital copies? So there's a lot of gray areas in terms of like, okay, is this like where is this information being stored? Who all has access to this information? Is it the company, parent company? Is it partners? So you never really know. So when it comes to like um, digital like privacy, I mean, it's very much like in today's time, that's not really a thing
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Cloud server, is that just storage?
I mean, I'm not a software expert, so I don't know
Does.
the differences of say like clouds versus like local. I don't know that level
Okay.
of detail, but all that information is being stored somewhere, right? So when you think about say like on cloud, where
Mhm.
oh pay an extra $10 a month and you get additional 50 gigabytes of storage, that information is being stored on I mean like all of that um whether it's I mean I guess it would have to be there's still the physical aspect of um like servers and storage. So even like cloud, that info it's not like that information is like actually stored up in the air. It's stored on like it's stored on hardware,
Yeah.
whether it's nationwide or worldwide. Um, it's stored somewhere. So it's just a matter of like, okay, is this bouncing back and forth between different um, like storage locations or whatever case may be. But yeah, that's like kind of my extent of the cloud knowledge.
Okay.
That's so crazy. I I think about some of the stuff you and I had talked about previously, obviously not on camera, but you talking about robots, and I know at one point we talked about bunkers and all different types of goals we would have for the future. It really makes me wonder is any would doing anything off grid is off grid even a thing anymore? It doesn't even seem like that would be possible with all the navigation technology when it comes to like GPS or like even Google Earth and things of that nature, where I can go in and zoom in wherever I want to, and somehow they have images of it that you can zoom in on, unless it's Antarctica, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. I just
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Google Earth is that's there's a lot more than just that aspect to it where because like Google Earth, um you got cars that are driving around that have
Yeah.
cameras on them and like are capturing like street views, right? But um there's more recent technology that is has a lot more implications. So there's I don't know if you've seen flock cameras, but I
Yeah.
don't know if that's local or like where that is, but essentially it's another type of surveillance where um the running like theory is that is like tracking car movements and where cars go to and fro essentially all the time, where you have these cameras that are installed, whether it's in intersections, whether it's off highways, all they're doing is monitoring. So whether it's that or whether it's satellites, I mean, it's not like you can truly be off the grid anymore nowadays. Because I mean, when you think about what's happened in the past 6 months to a year, where you've got um, very high up individuals that are showing people pictures of where they live, and you're like, hey, I know all of your movements right now. It's not like anything can be really hidden anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, it's there's definitely perks of being able to be self-sustaining, where if you have your own energy, you have your own clean water, whether it's filtration, whether it's having your own produce, where it's now not having chemicals and like pesticides and herbicides and preservatives that you don't necessarily know where they're coming from and you don't know what's in your food. But if you have everything like grown by yourself, there obviously are advantages to that. But in terms of like fully being able to live um without like surveillance is another thing where like there's the self-sustaining aspect to it, but um you're always going to have um at least my belief is there's always going to be someone that is able to like, know your movements. So even if you own your own land, I mean you have neighbors, if you that there's only so much you could do, even if you have, say, your own land and you're building your own infrastructure out there. Um, I mean, there's always a matter of like what is able to be seen, not necessarily from the ground, but from the air, from space. So yeah, it's a nice thought to be able to live off the grid, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I kind of want to. Do you have anything you want to say before I pivot a bit?
Yeah, do you yourself like take any steps? Because it sounds like you'd be more of on the side of you're wary of all this invasion of privacy. We'll call it that. So do you yourself take any steps of trying to limit any of your privacy being interfered with?
I mean, there's only so much you could do.
Right,
So
of course.
it's a matter of like, sure, you can have steps. Um, but even then, like I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so the extent of my knowledge will still not be enough.
Yeah,
If someone really wanted to, it's like, I mean, yeah, I could do the best that I think will keep me um safe from like I guess like hobbyists or people with
yeah,
very limited knowledge. But if someone with significantly more knowledge and abilities than me wanted to, it's like, yeah, there's no stopping that.
yeah.
So it's a nice thought to be able to at least like try to have my own safeguards, but whether or not it's actually going to make a difference is another thing.
Yeah.
That so that being said, it makes me wonder more about the spiritual implications of stuff like this close monetization, when it comes to people who may not have the same foundational beliefs of you as you having the such revealing personal information about you. That is alarming in some ways. Obviously, I don't know 100% where you stand with Christianity. I know we and you have talked about it at some points. Me and Austin are very much Bible believing, whatever like the Bible is the foundation of everything we believe. So, knowing that obviously a very hard time of tribulation is ahead, some of this stuff is just seems to be a bit of physical foreshadowing of things that different, whether it's other religions in adversity to Christianity, technology in adversity to Christianity, or just people, again, people with different worldviews, morals than someone like one of us three, when they have this type of information on you, it can really put you in a bind. Just to take it, we're both lovers of movies. If I remember correctly, you're a movie fan as well sometimes. But I think about like uh obviously it's based on a true story, but Snowden, the Edward Snowden story. And are you familiar with him?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, he's a CIA whistleblower who worked, I guess, alongside the NSA, and he exposed that the NSA and CIA are able to view you through your computer cameras, your phone cameras, anything that has a camera or a microphone, they can tap into if it's plugged in, and sometimes, in some cases, even when it's not plugged in. So it makes me think of things like that, and also with some of your outline stuff I was looking on with these psychosis trends that we're starting to see within people, it seems like there could be a bigger um, force at work here behind technology. I don't know how familiar you are with Genesis 6, but there's a small section in there where it talks about men of renown who were offspring of fallen angels and the human women. They're called the Nephilim. And a lot of people would assume, maybe, assume's not the right word, but they draw the conclusion that a lot of modern day technology, fire, weaponry, these things came from demonic forces, fallen angels that kind of gave these revelries to humanity. So that being said, it makes me think a lot about this AI stuff where it really is starting to take form of psychosis. Are you of the belief in anywhere that any of this could be conscious? I know we talked, or you sent, we haven't talked about it on this yet, but I was very interested in this article you sent on the Times about the author Richard Dawkins and the chatbot Claudia, and he's convinced AI is conscious, right? So, are you of the belief that it's conscious? Do you think that it's possible that demonic forces, fallen angels type thing, these spiritual entities can use technology, especially ushering into the age of robots that it seems it's vastly approaching with the AI, Tesla homebots and things like that? Do you think that any of that is a possibility already in motion? What in a grand scheme, what is your view on takes like that?
So that's a lot to unpack there, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I guess like you brought up Genesis and you brought up the Nephilim. So there, whether it's biblical or extra biblical, where there are the Bible talks briefly, but in different books about that. And other books that used to be considered like biblical canon, where now it's like apocryphal books and the Book of Enoch
Like Enoch and
um,
stuff like that.
dive even deeper into that. And there's a lot of contention with whether it's Protestants versus Catholics of are those books actually like biblically canon? Um, and like particularly the point of contention is when it comes to like the implications of what um like the origins of Nephilim and whether or not they're actually still around nowadays. So I mean, yeah, it's there's a lot there. Whether or not that is true and real is like there's only so much um used to thinking about that just because like whether that is true or not, I mean like it's the the stance shouldn't be one of fear, but one of knowing that the battle's already won. So it's like, okay, that whether or not there are biblical prophecies that still have yet to happen, where we know it's going to get worse. That doesn't necessarily mean that we should fear it, where yes, it's going to be really horrible, and whether it's the tribulation, the great tribulation, whether or not we're going to be um, whether or not that's going to be cut short for Christians or whether or not we're going to have to endure that, we don't know. And it's a matter of like, you can spend a lot of time thinking about it and studying it, and but like at the end of the day, it's like it's not in our control. We can't change the outcome. We can't do anything to stop it or prevent it. So it's interesting to think about whether or not there is an overlap between say the and whether it's the increase of knowledge from a human aspect or where that knowledge came from, and if it derived from humans. Um, but like it's there's only so much that you could do about it. So if we're talking about the increase in knowledge from um, like today's standpoint, it's only going to get worse. So this was theorized back in, I believe, the 70s or 80s, um, the theory of the singularity, where AI is going to be mankind's last invention, where it'll reach a point where the AI is going to become so smart, artificial, not just artificial intelligence, but artificial general intelligence, where it surpasses humanity's abilities to teach it, where it can now teach itself. Um, it can grow at such an exponential rate where now it is not only teaching itself from like a software standpoint, but able to, I guess, like replicate itself, like quote unquote reproduce in the sense of it needs a physical soft or like a physical I mean for lack of a better word, like body, right? So whether it's servers, whether it's um this like computational power to be able to sustain that amount of I guess like AI for I mean just but that's been every bit of 30, 40 years ago, and like what we're seeing now is prior to COVID. I mean, yeah, I heard of AI, but it wasn't as mainstream. So now you had ChatGPT, but 3.0 was the introduction. Now GPT-4, GPT-5, and now you have all the other players. And it's only going to get more exponential. Um, so, I mean, there was a lot there in your question, but like
Yeah.
from, I guess, like to summarize, like whether or not there's only like a physical aspect of it or whether or not there's a spiritual aspect, I don't think that really changes anything. Not everyone's going to agree with it. Not everyone's going to um, see the world from that lens, and have those beliefs. But like at the end of the day, it's like there is no stopping this. There are biblical prophecies that are currently happening and have yet to happen, and it's something that like it must happen. So from that aspect, it's interesting in terms of like being in this field where yes, it has implications. Yes, there's a controversy associated with it. Um, but like in terms of like technology in general, like there's going to be and there is an increase of knowledge and an increase of technology. in the last days. And like it's a matter of like there it doesn't always have to be a negative. So there are positives associated with it where with technology, now we have like from a medical aspect of it, we have the ability to whether it's cure, whether it's improve the quality of life, whether it's pain management, there are things that we know today that we didn't know 10, 20 years ago that have helped people. Um, and like with social media, like it has its downsides, but also has its perks where you're able to connect people from other sides of the world that you would have no way of meeting without for social media, and yet you might be going through the same struggle that no one else has ever gone before. So whether it's rare neurological disorders or whether it's physical um, like physical aspects of like someone being a quadriplegic or paralyzed, and the community is so small, but from social media and be able to bridge other countries and other continents, you're able to have a sense of community that you wouldn't have without social media. So there are positives to it. It's just a matter of what you do with the technology and with the tools, whether you use that outreach for good and for a positive impact or not. So
Dude. Well, I was really glad to hear you say at the beginning of my eight-piece question and your response that you think that there's really no use in talking about certain things and maybe not even necessarily talking, but um, researching and fearing the outcome of something that is already inevitable. Like you said, I think it's important, and we mentioned this in the episode previous to this. Similar to politics, when there's nothing you can do, the players are out of your hand, and they're gonna do what they're gonna do. All you can really do is focus on Christ. All you can really do is just know that his word is true and he's going to do what he said he's going to do, and everything else, like you said, that is prophesied to happen has to happen. So there's really not much fear in that if we know, like you said also at the beginning, that the battle's already won. So we're really in a position of victory as followers of Christ before it even gets to the point where it feels like we're at our darkest hour. So that was encouraging to hear you say that, because I think that that's a good reminder, especially when you have conversations that can take such dark turns where you're like, "Oh my gosh, it just feels like they know more about me than I know about myself in all likelihood. They know the things that I look at that I don't want people to know that I look at. They know the things about me that I don't necessarily want to remember about me. Things that, I did 10 years ago that I've tried to bury, they probably have record of somewhere in a digital form. So it's things like that where you're like, "Oh my gosh, like how can you escape it?" And the truth is you can't escape it. And the same way its digital implications is kind of just manifesting a real spiritual issue, is that your sins and your choices in life all collect as well. Obviously, there's not a data center holding all these things, but there is a spiritual reaping and sowing of you get what you give, I would say, in the sense of throughout your life, you're making a series of decisions, and each fork in the road you decide to, go this route or that route, leads you to a different place. Obviously, God allows you to go all the different routes, but it's interesting how in a digital form we're starting to see it's kind of poetic that we don't want all this digital data of us, but there's still all this spiritual data of us. And it's kind of just highlights the fact that we need a savior. So when you have to look at it in the face in a digital form, which hopefully none of us ever have to do, um, it's kind of just like I wouldn't say frightening, but like surreal to think about that that's even a thing that's possible, which, 20 years ago, people probably would have been saying the same thing about what the iPhone is nowadays. It's a whole computer in your pocket. I remember the first iPhone, you couldn't even have a screensaver on it. It was just you had to have the black screen, and the coolest thing it could do was paper toss. Like those were the simple days, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? You remember the paper
yeah.
toss? So I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing about it because it's so kind of just so much to process that it's kind of eye-opening, and yet what you said was very encouraging of
Yeah.
when you can't do anything about it, why worry about it? And just focus on what you can change and focus on what you can do. So I guess that's where I want to go next, unless there's anything you want to say about it.
No, I'm good right there.
I really wanted to jump into this parasocial relationships thing because I thought that that was very intriguing when you sent me the outline of that. Do you want to just briefly touch on what that is and how that's applicable to our conversation thus far?
Yeah, so a quick Google search, right? So a parasocial relationship is a one-sided physical, psychological bond. One person extends emotional energy, time, interest, while the other party, often a celebrity, influencer, or fictional character, is entirely unaware of their existence. Though entirely imaginary, these bonds feel deeply real and provide genuine comfort. So, I mean, you see that everywhere nowadays,
Yeah.
where people that are like into following celebrities, where you got Kim Kardashian, you got Taylor Swift, you got all the others that people have like an intimate knowledge of their background, their dog names, that like information that is not typical to know um for like the extent of information when it's primarily one-sided, where the celebrities know nothing about you. They don't know of your existence. They don't even know your name. They don't know anything about you. So the whole like parasocial relationship aspect where from from like social media where you have one-sided relationships with people on the other side of the phone screen where you're heavily emotionally invested in another person when they do not feel the same. So in terms of like going back to the main theme of isolation, here um you have the ability to be invested in someone emotionally without ever meeting them, without ever talking to them, from the safety and comfort of your own home, to the point where now some people are pursuing those types of relationships more than physical relationships, like outside of social media, outside of technology as a whole, where instead of going out and socializing face to face, they're doing it virtually in an aspect where it's completely one-sided.
Yeah. That makes me think. Oh, you want to say something before I go
Go for
into?
it. Go for it.
I mean, I was in a previous relationship. Obviously, I'm married now, but a couple relationships before I met the woman who would become my wife, there was a little bit of a weird thing going on where she was super obsessed with Harry Styles. And I remember at multiple times, like kind of craving the attention she gave Harry Styles in our own relationship because we were together. But she would, she could name, like you said, pet names or whatever, birthdays, every lyric to every song. Me, a musician myself, I was like, dang, you don't even care about my music like that. Like it kind of makes you question someone's priorities when they're
Absolutely.
putting these people that they have never met on a pedestal in that way. What has it always been that way? Like besides Michael Jackson, with like people, and I could only think of like Michael Jackson and Elvis that had that sort of impact. But like you said now, there's so many people like that, whether it's Billie Eilish, the Kardashians, Taylor Swift. I meet people, and it's not like I feel like it's more of a conversation now of not are you into somebody like that? It's who are you into like that? Because almost everyone has someone that they don't know that they know so much about. I'm think even in my own life specifically, like I know way too much right now about J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Like there's no reason I should know so much about their personal lives nor care, but for some reason that's something that I've been into learning. I think that there's a balance to that. I don't think that is inherently evil in itself. It's good to know, like even if you want to take it to a spiritual sense, church fathers, the disciples, Paul, Jesus himself. There's benefits to knowing these people and their life and things like that, but I'm curious what your perspective is on where's the line where it becomes under this category of a parasocial relationship where it's kind of, para makes me think kind of parasitic, like where it
Yeah.
becomes kind of detrimental to your everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, like with the line, it's tough to make a blanket statement of like where is the line because the line's different for everyone.
Hmm.
But in terms of say parasocial relationships, when you really boil it down, in terms of the why behind them, I don't know if it's um like whether it's a jealousy or an envy where you're seeing someone's status, someone's fame, someone's wealth, and you're wanting to follow in like those footsteps. Whether it's almost like an idolatry stance of putting someone on a pedestal that they don't deserve to be on. That goes a lot more than just say parasocial relationships, but I would say just across the board. I mean, we see that very frequently where people put other people on pedestals that they don't belong being on pedestals. If you look at Paul, people are trying to um, put Paul on a pedestal, and Paul saying that he's the first most of sinners, the father, like the there is a route of um, putting yourself on a pedestal, and then there's the opposite of having a mindset of humility and humbling yourselves, where you acknowledge that whether you're talking about yourself, where it's like, look, I don't deserve to be on a pedestal, or whether it's other people, where it's like just realizing that um, whether it's comparing yourselves to celebrities or whatever the case, they they're people at the end of the day. They're no better, no different than you and I. They might have different circumstances, different wealth, but at the end of the day, I mean, they're humans. Um, so it's an interesting phenomenon. I don't think it's new in the sense of um, having like a very large amount of like understanding and like connection to someone one-sided. But I think that with the rise of social media, that it's been a lot more um, prevalent and like the potential for that sort of relationship to develop is a lot easier nowadays because with influencers, um, I mean, you see them everywhere. And whether it's, say, now going back to algorithms, I mean, if you watch like a single video, say like weightlifting or bodybuilding, and you're just like, wow, that's an incredible physique. And then you start seeing that same influencer time and time again. And it's like, oh, it's very easy to go down a kind of a rabbit hole of like following, where that's the term on social media is, oh, you follow someone. So whether you're following a specific person so much so that you start to know, say like every single time they post, and you know all about their life like that, it's tough to draw a line in terms of like when does that become um kind of more of a problem. um because like I mean there could be, playing devil's advocate, there could be not necessarily benefits, but you can look at someone as an inspiration. So if we're talking about Paul, right? Paul is saying, follow me as I follow Christ. So it's a matter of like leading by example, where um it's not in the sense of putting someone on a pedestal, but acknowledging that you can learn from someone, whether it's um, say discipleship, where you're putting yourself in a situation where you're acknowledging that you there's a lot that you can learn and you can grow in, and the alternative, or like the other side of that being mentor, is like you listen to your mentor, you listen to their guidance, you follow their actions. So it's kind of tough to differentiate the two sometimes, where whether it's like a mentor inspiration figure, or whether it's someone that um because like with social media now, you can have inspirations and like quote unquote mentors. It could be a one-sided mentor, but have that sort of aspect um on social media now. But when it becomes a problem, I don't know. But it's definitely interesting to think about, where this seemingly new sort of like type of relationship um is it just like came out of the blue now, where we have that on social media, where we have people that um can almost um prefer those types of relationships because it's easier. You don't have to worry about um like the stress, and you don't have to worry about the like a fear of rejection, where it's you have like a wall of safety. So I don't know. But in terms of like whole isolation aspect, I would say that's a huge driving factor in like why we have become isolated, is you have that side of social media where you have the ability to pursue relationships that are one-sided.
Yeah, that's so crazy. And it feels like we're being targeted in multiple aspects because the way you put it as discipleship is so true. It's people choosing someone they don't know to be discipled by, but they're not being discipled in the ways of the Bible and the ways of the Lord. They're being discipled in the ways of the world, which can have some really grave implications if it's not kept in check. And similar to what you said, it's these kind of driving forces where it's so accessible to have a one-sided relationship. And like you said, there's really no downsides to it on the surface, in the sense of you can't get rejected by them, you can't get hurt, you can't get told this is no good because it's one-sided. The other person doesn't even know you exist. So there's a lot of safety, quote unquote, barriers in place, but it's similar to the same, I would say, thread of a problem that you see with like modern day pornography, with dudes who are so comfortable with achieving something that's supposed to be sacred, but really is just looked at nowadays as a feeling to capture. It's so easy to just have the feeling on like a gumball machine where you can go and get it whenever you feel the need to have it, as opposed to when it's a real life relationship, a real marriage, and a real, it takes sacrifice, it takes rejection at times, it takes sacrificing yourself and your wants and needs and things like that. So I see from a bigger picture, it's all starting to come into view of different aspects of our lives are being targeted to isolate us, which is so interesting because I can't remember off the top of my head where exactly it says this. My mind's going to Ephesians, but I could be wrong about that, where it talks about the devil being like a prowling lion. If you want to see if you can
I
find
think
that.
that is Ephesians.
It is. But it's so interesting that he's compared to a lion because in a similar way, and this is what made me think that this stuff is so spiritual at its core, even though it's not necessarily marketed as such. It's so spiritual at the core because the devil operates like a lion in the sense of, how do lions hunt? Well, even within their packs, they can't, especially with the type of prey that they typically want. It's wildebeest, antelopes, things like this. They have to isolate it in order to capture it. So they'll find the weakest link, they'll find the one that's slowest or whatever it is. They'll isolate it, injure it, whatever it needs to be for it to get off by itself, and then that's when they attack it. Once it's by itself, they're able to more quickly capture and kill it. So it makes me think of how each of our, I would say, things that God created as good, that the devil has played the long game and targeted over time in order to isolate us and make us comfortable in the isolation to where the point where we don't look at it, the isolation itself as a threat, and that's when he attacks. It's similar to like not trusting your thoughts and feelings, um, because the moment, oftentimes you can trust the first few thoughts you have because they're good on the surface, but they're a con man because you can trust, oh, yeah, I'm just looking on this site. I'm not, I'm just scrolling and there's some questionable things here, but I'm good. I'm good. Well, it may not be that time you fall into it. It may not be the next time you fall into it where you're just like, oh, it's nothing. But then it's that time when you least expect it where something strikes and you fall back into whatever it is you've been trying to avoid, whether that's something like pornography or something as so simple as like binge eating or something like that, where it's something that's overlooked nowadays. But even our food industry is being targeted in that way, to the point where food is even more addicting than it's ever been in anybody's entire life because of all the chemicals that they're putting in it. Even the tobacco industry is like that, with there's like 200 ingredients in a single cigarette.
Doom scrolling,
Doom
as
scrolling.
we
So,
talked about.
it's not just attacking your lusts. It's not just attacking your relationships. Attacking your attention span, and ultimately what it's attacking is your soul. And it's just trying to find different windows into that, to ultimately surround us. So
Yeah.
that, do you have anything you want to say?
I mean, like you kind of pointed out, it's attacking everything, right? So say say diet, for instance. Say you have a new Year's resolution. You're trying to turn over a new leaf. You want to eat healthier, and you're driving on the side of the road, and you see a McDonald's billboard where it's like, oh man, now I want McDonald's. Or say, um, you have an issue with gambling and you see another billboard that says, "Oh, Choctaw, I can win, $50 million this weekend." So it's everything. It's not a specific struggle, a specific vice that is being targeted. It's everything. So whether it's our attention span, our time, or our money, um, like our very like selves are being targeted. And it's tough because like we have a unique struggle that I don't believe has existed on this level, for like our parents didn't have to deal with this, our grandparents didn't have to deal with this. It was a simpler time. You didn't have the internet. You went out back with your chickens and like life was good. So it's a matter of like our our struggles and what we're tempted with is, yes, the temptations have always been here, for thousands of years, but the level of temptation and how frequently we're tempted is at a level that I don't believe has been seen before. Because now we have the social media, we have the internet, we have all the advertisements. Whether we unplug from our phones or not, we're still going to see it on the side of the road. Whether we're walking out in public and there's advertisements, on like grocery stores or shops where, um, it's it is so widespread that unless you are living in like under a rock or in a bunker or off the grid, it's like you will always have, um you'll always be targeted. But even then, it's like the the whole analogy of like, okay, what if you were, just like on an island, the only person on the island, you don't have internet, you don't have anyone else around. I mean, even then you would still have struggles because I think that it's a battle of the mind. So it's a matter of like um how can I renew my mind every single day, and ultimately it's not about me. I myself will continue to fall short. I'll continue to need a savior. So it's that mentality where, I think when you really boil it down to isolation and to struggle and being targeted, it's a very unique battle where, yes, I would argue that it's a more difficult battle, but it's also, we're living in an interesting time where arguably it's more obvious of a battle, where it's becoming a lot like they're not hiding anymore. It's very out in the open, blatantly obvious, to the point where, um, it's almost getting watered down, where they can be out in the open, and no one bats an eye, just because like with the whole UFO released, it's like, oh great, reptiles, that's just another day. So it's a matter of like there's such an information overload
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
it is difficult for us to distinguish what is real and what is whether AI generated, what is fake, meant just for clicks, where you have a misleading headline, you have an AI generated image that wants you to click it, wants you to click on the website or get views or get likes. Um, so I don't know. It's tough, but it's also it really makes you think that we have an opportunity, that has not existed, that our parents did not have to deal with. And it's just a mindset where, you can have the doom and gloom mindset of, yes, this is horrible. Yes, there's nothing we could do about it. Or you have the mindset where this is the opportunity that regardless of what we're faced with, we can still make the choice, to not put, ourselves first when essentially the entire world has a mentality of, oh, self-love, get more money, get more views, more followers. It's all about you. But having a different mindset where, instead of putting our flesh first, and putting ourselves first, it's pursuing, um, something that is not seen, is not, um, widely understood or accepted or that everyone agrees with, but, more of like an eternal aspect where it's not about us and it never has been about us.
So we talked about like advertising, robotics, AI, social media. All this has me thinking, have you seen the movie The Truman Show?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, have you seen it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it feels like with all of this and the powers that be that kind of working behind the scenes to maneuver all of this into place, it feels like that's where society is wanting to be pushed by them, where it's just like we're predictable and we're scripted basically. And so, and in the movie, that's what happens. Like he's basically programmed into a reality show, and like even his wife is,
A character, and
yeah,
everyone knows except for him.
yeah. And so, like, at one point in the movie, he's starting to see cracks in the programming, basically, and he's starting to question everything. He's like, what is going on here? And so, I don't know, in your opinion, do you think, like, what is the end goal? You know, we talked about, like, what is the line? And we're not sure what the line is, but, like, what do you think? Like, if the line, we're unaware of it, at what point do we stop it? Not that we can, maybe that's not the right question, but at what point, like, what is the end goal?
I mean, I think the end goal is very clear where it's distracting us from pursuing God at the end of the day, where
Yeah.
regardless of what the distraction is, regardless of what the vice is, where we're pursuing and like spending all of our time, if it is a pursuit of the world, that's a success. Where
Yeah.
it's a matter of like, I don't care what you name it, it just do something of the world. And with that, it is a successful distraction. You are now focusing your eyes not on pursuing God, not on seeing the world through a spiritual lens, but just misguided. You have successfully been misguided and are spending your time pursuing the else category.
Mhm.
Um, so it's that's what it ultimately boils down to. I mean, Paul talks about it in all his epistles where um, at the end of the day, it's about our flesh versus spirit. That is truly what it boils down to. And we're always going to struggle in the flesh. But it's a matter of like through our experiences, through our trials, through what we have been, um, what we've been entrusted with, whether it's a struggle, whether it's whatever, a gift or maybe even like abundance is like we are called to grow up in not only our mindset, but from a metaphorical aspect of growing up in salvation, to put away the flesh, to put away what how we once walked. And that's something that is sometimes easier said than done, especially in today's world where it's nonstop. I mean, like we are facing distractions, maybe not on an hourly basis, but certainly on a daily basis. Sometimes it is on an hourly basis. Sometimes it's from sunrise to sunset. And it can be exhausting. But I think that's the goal is for it to be exhausting,
Yeah.
to ultimately where you just want to throw in the towel and say, you know what? I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of wanting to
Yeah.
say not spend time on social media. I want to go back on social media. So like that aspect of it where you look around and you see all these advertisements, you see all like everyone doing the same thing and you want to join them in doing that same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah, for sure. I think
That's
with that too, I thank the Lord for opening my eyes to things, you know, before Jesus in my life, which was before 30. Um, I dived and dabbled into everything I wanted without question. And I didn't really, I had curiosities of things, deeper meanings of things, of powers at work, whatnot. But I didn't really sit with it. I didn't really question it. So I thank the Lord that He opened my eyes to it. And now, ever since then, like I question all of it. I ask why for so many things and try to at least understand the root of things on my in my life at least. Why am I listening to this? Why am I watching that? Should I? Especially if I call myself a believer. So with that being said, is with all of this as well that we've talked about, is there any you know practical ways that you find yourself trying to combat everything that we've talked about?
So that's a tough one. With with asking yourself why on everything you do. I mean, like Peter had a vision where, in the or vision or dream, regardless, a blanket covered all the animals, all the earth, and the whole point of the vision was, um, everything's made new, and nothing in and itself is quote unquote wrong. It's a matter of like whether it's our mindset, whether it's how much time we spent on it, like with not just that example, but like what we eat. When some people ask whether or not what we eat is clean or unclean, and like at the end of the day, it's that mindset can be tough if you are so like hyper focused on everything you say, everything you do, and like I think that the and th this is a I am still like working on this as well, right? And I will continue to work on it. But the mindset that I think ultimately is most edifying to the Lord is not necessarily like keeping a mental list of everything to do and not do, but ultimately just following Christ. At the end of the day, it's like then you get into, okay, what does that look like? What practically does that look like? Because that's easier said than done, but it's a matter of like there are a lot of different verses where the main point is to always have your eyes set on Him. So trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He'll make you pass straight. Let us with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in our time of need. So the constant putting our eyes not on the world, not on all this mess, but putting our eyes on Him. How does it look in real life? How can we practically do that when we have these struggles, when we have these distractions? Um, whether that's asking ourselves why on everything we do, and analyzing if we should be doing that, whether it's a matter of not not necessarily worrying about the individual like actions, but how that let's see, how you can ultimately be a light to those around you, whether it's people you know or don't know. So if you're in a certain situation and you're asking yourself, why am I in the situation? I mean, it very well could be not for you, but for someone else, where um, it's not about you where you're in that situation, but um, you could be the light that someone needs without you even knowing it. And whether you actually interact with them or not, whether they just see you, um, it could be that level where it's not something that you're meant to know. 100% of the plan, where you're not meant to know why for everything, but just trusting that God has a plan for us and that no matter what we do, um, we have the opportunity to um, not put ourselves first, but to see that, I mean, the goal is for our lives to be glorifying to Him, and that our actions, whether it's affecting someone else or not, is glorifying. So I, I think I think that kind of answers your question in terms of like how can I like practically take steps when it's I don't know it's something that it's a daily battle. Like when you really boil it down to it, it's something that you do have to be mindful of where you're talking about your eyes being opened, and it's something that you can't go back to. I mean, once you have a new mindset on life, and just a new um, whether it's renewing your mind, whether that's a one-time event or whether your mind needs to be renewed every day, um, where you'll be faced with new struggles, new temptations that you might not have dealt with in the past, but it's something that um, it's that those are new opportunities to humble yourself and to put God before yourself. So um, daily battle.
Yeah.
It's something that it's tough and it's individual, and not everyone will have the same mindset and the um, same struggles, but ultimately, like we're all pursuing the same goal here.
Kevin, I don't know if correct me if my interpretation of how you answered is wrong. Um, when I mentioned that I questioned the whys to everything that I did, it wasn't from a like legalistic point of view where it was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Where now the steps that I'm trying to take faithfully are that like they're not faithful. Now I'm trying to like work for Christ, like work for my salvation. It was from the perspective of like, is what I'm doing or maybe listening to because I love music and movies. So is what I'm doing feeding my flesh or my spirit? Like, does this help me in my walk with Christ rather than, if I'm listening to some music where I did feel like it's kind of feeding my flesh and kind of making me want something that isn't of the Lord. It was
Mhm.
more of that standpoint.
Yeah, and I kind of want to piggyback on what he just said and on what you said when you were explaining, because that's where I was kind of sitting when you were talking about the renewal of your mind. I think I mentioned don't trust your thoughts and feelings earlier. And when I said that, what I kind of meant is we're less like a generator, a thought generator, feeling generator, and more like a receiver in a lot of cases. And with us being inundated with technologies that are broadcasting all these things, we have spiritual forces at work in our heads. We're receiving all this information that is saying glorify the flesh, glorify the flesh, glorify the flesh. Our whole culture is inundated with this individualistic mentality of me, of if it doesn't bring me joy or me peace, then it ain't for me. When you're saying it's something bigger than us, so the only thing you can do is transform your mind. And when you were talking about practical ways to transform your mind, the first thing I went to was that receiver. If we're receivers, then it's kind of like a radio. You got to be tuned to that frequency to hear what's broadcasting. So, in order to renew your mind daily, the only way you can practically do that is to tune your mind daily to what God is calling us to. And I do believe, I'm a firm believer in that being in the Word daily, being in Scripture daily, before you do anything else is so important to get that proper tuning. Because if the first thing you're going to when you wake up in the morning, and this was me for a long time, is that phone, well, now I'm in this comparative mindset. I'm automatically waking up, and the first thing I'm doing is tuning my brain to the frequency of the world, as opposed to if I just don't even look at that thing. I don't care how important the calls were that I got last night, the texts were, the emails, whatever. My job or whatever can wait. I need to move over and tune myself through scripture and through prayer to what God's saying. And again, like you said, that's not like any merit. That's not earning me salvation in anything. I'm not working my way, and that's not getting me brownie points in heaven with God. What that's doing is using the word of God as the sword that it is in order to defend yourself against the attacks coming from this world, from the isolation that's cornering each and every one of us in this world. So when it comes to that tuning, it's really hard to do that because a lot of us just wake up, me included, and sometimes I don't want to get on my phone or get on my that Bible. Sometimes I want to do something else. Sometimes I wake up to a phone call for work and I have to jump in on that. But I was listening to this nutritionist. Her name's Barbara O'Neill. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she talks about how the first thing your body does in the morning is very important, which is why she doesn't eat breakfast. Because in the morning she wakes up and now her whole body's energy, if the first thing you do is eat breakfast, your body's energy is focusing on digestion. And then the rest of your day is going to be your body's going to be focused on digestion. So whenever it runs out of things to digest, it's going to be sending signals to your brain that it needs more food because its primary focus of that day has been digestion. So that kind of made me think about that as well when we're talking about transforming your mind, renewing your mind, and you have to renew your mind daily, right? Because your feelings change, your thoughts change. Some days I wake up and I'm having a good day. I feel like a good Christian boy. And then some days I wake up and I'm like, so I've never believed anything that I've ever been supposed to. I actually am nihilistic to the core. And, it can go one way or the other. The dice falls one way too far every day if I'm tuning to myself or tuning to the world. But it's like that scripture's like a ground wire or something, as opposed in addition to being a frequency. So you have this way it's able to ground you to what's real and at the same time tune you to what matters. So I don't know if you've looked at it that way or if that's even what you were also saying. But do you have anything you want to say? Do you have anything you want to say about that? I don't know if I even really had a question. I just kind of saw the connection points
Yeah.
between what both of you were saying and wanted to help Neuralink it a bit.
We're talking about the same thing here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, did you have any more questions or anything you wanted to talk about or mention before we got off of here?
I think I covered the gist of it.
I got anything you wanna?
No, I'm good. I appreciated all of your insight, more so than I definitely know into the tech space.
Yeah.
That's for sure. No, I
There's a
think,
lot of moving parts, a lot going on
yeah,
Yeah.
currently.
absolutely. Hopefully I won't get too fixated, but I'll definitely go home and start like YouTubing some stuff
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Have you heard of Ryan Montgomery?
On my channel.
He's like known as like the ethical hacker.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them.
So he was on like the Sean Ryan, is that guy's
Oh
name?
yeah.
He was
Uh,
on Sean Ryan, and then he's been on a bunch of other podcasts. I've been seeing clips of him on Tucker Carlson, but he was saying a lot of the same exact stuff you were saying,
Hmm.
that the amount of information you can get on one person with just, an email address or a phone number or a name is insane.
Yeah.
Um, so it was really, to hear it from someone who I also know who's in the space was kind of like, oh gosh, this is so much more real
yeah.
than, just watching someone you don't know talk about it. So I really did appreciate the conversation. I really loved how you tied it all back into Christ at the end. I was like, so like when you started saying that, I was like, let's go.
Yeah. My
But
favorite was the battle's already won. I was like, okay,
yeah, I was
okay,
like, dude, what
cool.
are we even talking about? Let's turn the pot off. Like, it's like so true. Like, why do we, especially because we were talking about it in one of the breaks. I was like, dang, bro, like, and you're like, I'm anxious
I was trying
now.
to do my
After that
anxious
first
vamp
one, I
up.
was like, dude, there's so much going on.
Yeah,
But then right after that, you were like, yeah, the battle's already won. So I don't really stress. And I was like,
yeah,
I needed to hear that. So
yep.
I really did appreciate that sentiment and you tying it back to that.
That was the
Um,
grounding of the
It
podcast.
really was. And it was exactly what I was hoping that it would go to. I didn't really know what to expect with the conversation. I knew you were kind of in the dark on where the conversation was going to go to. But I appreciate the little pre-notes you sent. I appreciate you being so open to doing this. And I really do think that it helped bring in the subject of the song Lonely Soul, which this was surrounding, which is just a song about wrestling with yourself, wrestling with individuality, and is there even a place for that in the Christian walk? And I think it's very much no. I think it's very much the devil wants you in a state of pride, whether that's taking pride in someone you don't know, taking pride in yourself, taking the weird form of pride called insecurities, or anything else that can be an extra leg of pride. And all this stuff seems to be targeting us in order to feel like a good person and think that our merit is of any good. And then when it's not that, if you don't believe that, to just feel like you're the worst person and there's nothing you can do and there's no hope, there's no point, and there's no life to live. And you beautifully said that, really only any purpose comes through a relationship with Christ. So I really did appreciate that. So thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
No fun.
All right, bro. Well, hopefully I'll see you soon. And yeah, thank you for joining us today on I.C.U. Live, episode
Cool.
2.
See you, Kevin.
Peace,
Good
bro.
talking to you guys.
Yes, sir. Bye.